So today we're going to be talking about Bitcoin. So I'm going to really trigger some people with this talk today because I disagree with everybody. Everybody says Bitcoin is digital gold. A lot of people say Bitcoin is digital property, digital real estate. This is a narrative we hear a lot in the Bitcoin space. And I disagree with all of this. I actually think a lot of people are looking at Bitcoin on a 50-year or a 100-year time frame, and I think they're not zooming out and having a look at Bitcoin on a 1,000 or a 100,000-year time frame. And when you do, I'm going to make the case for why Bitcoin is the most important technological revolution in human history. It's bigger than fire, bigger than the internet, bigger than the printing press. I'm going to make that case. It's a big case, I know. So we're going to be talking about why Bitcoin is the economic singularity. And when we do look at Bitcoin on a 10,000 or 100,000 year time horizon, I hope we're going to trigger 3 different very common narratives in the Bitcoin space. So my 3 controversial opinions that we're going to be discussing today is I'm going to be making the case why every single model is wrong. They're all going in the bin. I think your stock to flow model, your power law model, I don't think they're looking at the bigger picture. And this is also why I believe every price prediction for Bitcoin is wrong. I might actually get a little bit of a pulse check of the room though. Let's talk about 2030. I'd love to see where everybody's heads are at. Who thinks Bitcoin will be at $1 million by 2030? Show of hands. Okay. How about $50 million per coin? Any hands? My boy Brandon in the front row, look out. All right. Just a little bit of a pulse check, but I genuinely think we could be a lot higher than that. And that is without hyperinflation. Okay. Controversial opinion number 1. Controversial opinion number 2. Bitcoin is not the 5th technological revolution. So many people love this 50-year technological cycle. It's the K-wave cycle. This was founded by a Russian economist in the early 1900s. It's called the Kardashev scale. I also think it's wrong. Third controversial opinion that I'm going to be making the case for today is I genuinely believe we are going to see more change in the years between the year 2000 and 2050 than we saw for the past 500,000 years. So I genuinely think we're going to see more change between 2000 and 2050 than we saw between the years 448,000 BC to the year 2000. I know it's exponential change is going to be very difficult to understand, but I genuinely believe that our civilizational progress is built upon 4 key things. So I believe there are 4 things that drive technological change for our species. I believe they are energy, money, information, and I actually think democracy is a shitcoin. So again, I apologize for why that word is still there, but I do think property rights accelerates our change or how much innovation we unlock as a civilization. So I genuinely think those are the 4 things that make us us. And then when you zoom out and you have a look at the major innovations in each of those 4 fields, I want to show you some of the trends and the interesting convergences that I think I can see. So I believe there are 3 layers or 3 key unlocks that we've made in the realm of energy as Homo sapiens. Fire was the first big technological revolution 125,000 years ago. Then our second big unlock was the discovery of coal in the 1600s. So for the first time in tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of years, we went from burning wood for energy to coal. It was an incredible unlock. And then obviously the third revolution we're seeing in the realm of energy is something we're going through today. But again, look at layer number 2. Layer number 2 is very important. We got coal in the 1600s. Now, I believe each of the 4 things that make us us saw a major increase or unlock before the years 1770. So that is when the Industrial Revolution started. And I think what we saw just before the 1770s and the 1600s Renaissance, I think we're seeing it happen all over again. So again, let's run through this. We've got money. We used gold for 5,000 years. That was a huge technological innovation. The next innovation in money that really increased the velocity of money, it was actually central banking in the 1600s and double entry bookkeeping. So this is in the 1600s, and obviously we're going through a revolution right now. But again, what's that key time frame? Central banking in the 1600s, just before the 1770s Industrial Revolution. Let's have a look at information. How we have organized as a civilization makes us us. For hundreds of thousands of years, we were hunters and gatherers. We were throwing spears. We were throwing spears at animals. And then when we found the technological revolution of agriculture 10,000 years ago, we changed how we organized as a society. We started actually gathering and living in these agricultural societies, in villages and farms. So this is the first big revolution we saw. The next big unlock and the next big technological change that we saw, which changed how we organized as a society, was in the Industrial Revolution in the 1770s. And again, what's really interesting about these technological revolutions is they're centralizing. So we go from hunters and gatherers to agricultural societies. This centralizes us. Then in the 1770s, the Industrial Revolution brings all of the jobs into these big industrial cities. We get centralized again. Now, for the first time in human history, technology is once again changed. We're going through a technological revolution, but this time it's decentralizing us. And this is really interesting because each one of these ways how we organize, it increases the velocity of information and knowledge. Because again, how do we learn? We learn through interactions with other humans, and each one of these technological revolutions dramatically increased the velocity of how this information was spread amongst society. Again, I've got to really whip through these slides, but the next big innovations or the areas that I think makes us us is, again, this is kind of related to how we communicate and store information. So let's call it 5,000 years ago, roughly, written language emerged, and this increased the velocity of communication. Then in the 1450s, the printing press was created. Again, what's that key time frame I'm looking at? I'm going to make the case that there's all of these core ingredients saw a major fundamental shift before the year 1770. So the printing press was created in the 1450, and again, this created the separation of church and state. I commonly say that I believe that Bitcoin is going to do something very similar to what the printing press did, except this time I think Bitcoin is going to separate money from state for the first time in 7,000 years. But again, the big unlock we saw there was in the 1450s with the printing press, and now we're going through another revolution. Now again, these will be the worst slides that you guys have seen today. I apologize. I had to whip these up pretty quickly. But now I've got all of the key unlocks and key kind of technological revolutions in red. And you can see they all kind of happened before the years 1770. Now, why am I so fascinated with the years of the 1770s? Again, 250 years ago, we were pretty mediocre, let's be honest. We were rubbing sticks together, we were rubbing rocks together, trying to create a fire. We were still on the back of horses. We really weren't going many places as a civilization 250 years ago. And now, 200 years later, we're putting people on the moon, supposedly. But we are flying rocket ships around and all of these crazy things, and it was all because of the Industrial Revolution. Now, the entire case I'm trying to make right now is that what created the 1770s miracle is recreating again today. I think Bitcoin is making a major technological innovation in those 4 areas that make us us. And we haven't seen this since before the 1770s. So I genuinely think we're going to see an industrial revolution for the digital age. And that's because Bitcoin, it facilitates and it upgrades each of these 4 areas that I've got on screen right now. Bitcoin is the thing that in the realm of energy can actually take us to being a type 1 civilization. A civilization that doesn't waste any of the energy coming from our sun. Bitcoin incentivizes the usage of all of the wasted energy around the world. It increases monetary velocity. It increases the velocity of information by bringing everybody on the one monetary standard. And it gives property rights. I definitely prefer property rights over democracy. But it gives property rights to everyone on the planet. So again, I've got to whip through these slides pretty quickly, but each one of the 5 technological revolutions we saw after the 1770s created exponential change. Look at the speed that the creation of the mass transportation created in the early 1800s. We saw an exponential change in how quickly we could travel as Homo sapiens. Again, for hundreds of thousands of years, we were constrained to moving at 6 miles per hour. That's how fast we can run, or we could get a horse to gallop, 6 miles per hour. Trains changed that. 50 years later, steel changed how tall we could build. 50 years later, the automobile changed how quickly we could travel. Again, the automobile completely obsoleted horses in 10 years. Just think about how quickly technologies can take over when they do come along, and they are 1,000 times better than prior technologies. 50 years later, the microprocessor took the computing power that our civilization had access to exponentially. It increased it exponentially. And now everybody's saying, okay, what's 50 years after 1961? What's the next 5th technological revolution? Is it AI? No. Is it Bitcoin? I don't think it is. It's not. And I think the clues for why I believe that is because of the Great Stagnation. The Great Stagnation is telling us something very important about where we are in the bigger picture. Again, over the past 50 years, we've seen innovation in the realm of only bits, computer bits, not atoms. Our physical world really hasn't got materially better over the past 50 years, and I believe this is seen best by the Henry Adams curve. For 225 years, the energy consumption per capita followed an exponential curve. This is called the Henry Adams curve. But since the 1970s, hint, hint, we've fallen off the Henry Adams curve. So I believe that we're living through this great stagnation, and we're kind of seeing signs that all of the innovation and all of the progress that was built on the back of the 1770s industrial revolution, it's run out of steam. We need a new industrial revolution to actually create progress in our physical world. And I think we're at the beginning of a much bigger cycle. And I think because we're entering into the digital age, I think technology is a really powerful tool. I think we have 2 paths as a civilization. It's literally extinction or it's singularity. There's no in between. Again, a lot of people ask the question, a lot of people talk about the Fermi paradox. Where are the other civilizations? We are so small in the galaxy way, where's the other life? I mean, our planet's been around for what, 4 or 5 billion years? Where are the other planets? I'm making the case, I'm basing my assumption, or the thesis of the economic singularity is because every civilization in other galaxies, on other planets, they haven't created energy money, and they've blown themselves up. They've sadly gone through an extinction. So I firmly believe that the 2020s is our most important decade in human history. The years between 2000 and 2050 we're going to see more change in these 50 years than ever before. We've already really started to see a lot of change. And I think that because Bitcoin is an innovation in each of these 4 things that makes us us, I think we're seeing signs that Bitcoin is the singularity. And I firmly think it's going to do a lot more for the world than any other technological revolution in human history. So I'm going to whip through my slides pretty quickly. Now, what I think is really interesting is this slide here. All technologies get adopted in an S-curve. So typically for a technology to go mainstream, an inflection point is reached at about 10% adoption. And on average, it takes a new technology about the same amount of time to go from 0 to 10% adoption. And then it takes the same amount of time for it to go to 10% adoption to 90% adoption. But this is only possible if an inflection point is reached. And again, this is a little bit more speculative. Up until now, I like to think that my thesis has been somewhat, rooted in facts. But I think that thinking about our civilization as an S-curve, or the progress we've made as an S-curve, I genuinely think that where we are right now is an inflection point. And adopting energy money could be that very key unlock that accelerates our progress as a civilization. Now again, I've got a minute left, so I've kind of whipped through my slides pretty quickly here. But another really interesting thesis in the realm of technology is called crossing the chasm. So it's a similar concept. If a technology is not able to cross the chasm at about 10% adoption, it never goes mainstream. It dies out. It goes extinct. I genuinely think that if we do not cross the chasm and adopt energy money and finally actually unite as a globe, again, with the rise of nuclear power, nuclear bombs, we really are on the precipice of, let's just say, some very pivotal years ahead of us. And I genuinely think it's extinction or singularity. I don't think there is any in between. So I don't have the time to talk about why I think Bitcoin could be worth $5 billion per coin. The maths is just the maths. But I will say that all of your models are wrong. And I think that when you zoom out and look at Bitcoin on a 100,000-year time frame, I hope that I encourage people to think bigger and just prepare for volatility. I really think the next 10 years, 20 years could be the most volatile in our civilization's history. And I think Bitcoin adoption curves are going to be really interesting to watch. And I hate to say it, but right now, my base case for Bitcoin is that by 2030, we could be looking at a Bitcoin price tag of 10 million, 50 million, $100 million per coin, but we're still only at 5% global adoption. And again, I do not want this. I want the little guy to adopt Bitcoin. This is what I do. I want everybody to adopt Bitcoin before BlackRock, the billionaires, the corporations, the nation states, and all of the other pension funds around the world. But right now, as what we've seen since 2020, between 2020 and 2025, it makes me fearful that Bitcoin will be adopted as a store of value by the big money before it's adopted as a medium of exchange. So with all that said, guys, if you want to learn more about my crazy economic rants, I'm on YouTube, and I also talk more about my book, The Economic Singularity, on Substack. So with that said, thank you so much for listening, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Secure your BTC Prague 2026 ticket at the lowest possible price now.